Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend John Opalewski. And if you're watching by video, you'll recognize the third face on the screen. But John, why don't you introduce everybody to our guest today?
Hey, Jim. It's so good to be with you and to have a very special friend of ours in the podcast. Josh Spurlock is with us today. Josh is the founder of My Counselor Online. He'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And we've had Josh on our podcast, I don't know, 3-4 years ago maybe, and the response was so good, so overwhelming, we decided to have him back. And I think this is Josh's 4th time with us.
Yeah, he's a frequent flyer. Yeah.
Just can't keep me away.
He is. And so Josh, welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always so much fun to hang out with you guys. So hopefully we can do it in a fishing boat sometime in the near future.
Yeah, we were talking about that prior to getting rolling today.
All those in favor say aye.
That's right. Aye. So Josh, I know you've been with us before, and some of our watchers and listeners have heard your story, but since you've been with us, the podcast is growing, and we've got some new members of our audience. And I wondered if you would take a minute or two just to tell us. We always like our guests to tell us how they came to Jesus. Tell us your conversion story, because we want to hear that part of your journey.
Yeah, so I came to Jesus in the basement in my childhood home at about 12 years of age. I grew up in church, cut my teeth in the back of church pews and whatnot. But it was about 12 years old that I'm in my bedroom, in my bed late at night, kind of struggling with just some heavy things as a kid, some tough stuff that was a part of my story and part of my life, and feeling the pain of that and really crying out to God, if you're out there, if you're out there, I need you. I need help here. Like, I don't know how to navigate these hard things that I'm facing. And if you'll be with me and help me figure out this hard stuff, I'll serve you. I'll live for you. I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do. And I just felt the Lord speak to my heart in that moment. Like, I heard him as clear as he was audible, standing there, telling me that he was with me and that we would do this together. And I just wept. It was one of those moments where you encounter God in a tangible way, and you're not the same after that. And nothing has been.
What a great season of life to find more than your parents' faith and religion, but your own Savior. 12 years old, man. That was, if it would have happened at 16, what could have happened between 12 and 16?
Right.
So you're bar mitzvahed by the rabbi himself, brother. That's cool, man. That's very cool.
Very fun.
So then you move on through adulthood, and now I like to think of what you've done with the ministry that you have, the practice that you have. It might be common today. We might see a commercial for it on national television. But when you first came up with the idea, I would imagine online counseling was not the norm. So you're one of those guys, a pioneer. I heard the best description of pioneer is the guy who has the arrows in his chest and the bullets in his back.
I can show you the wounds. It's not bad. You're not wrong.
No, they're the first guy through the door, right? That's the school of urban warfare. They said the first guy through the door always gets bloody. And that's the truth. You're most vulnerable, you're most at risk, but everybody wants to be, if they can figure out a way, be that first guy through the door. So
they think they do anyways until they start having the arrows sink, right? And they're like,
yes, then it changes. Yeah. So tell us that story. Where did this idea come from? And then what did you have to battle to bring it to actual fruition? And then I guess you could almost call it mainstream now.
Yeah. So we, really didn't start out to do things online. In fact, if you'd have asked me in Bible college or when I got out of seminary and started the practice about doing online work, I told you we're crazy. It's can't possibly be as effective as working in person or work. Yeah. And so I had a real strong bias against it. And what changed along the way was I had a couple that I was working with. Our office was in Southwest Missouri at the time, and they had no resources in Northwest Arkansas where they were at for the challenges that they were facing. And so they would drive 2 hours from where they were at to my office on Fridays, and we would meet for a couple of hours. They would spend the night in town with their kids, and would then drive back the next day, the 2 hours to get back home, because they were desperate for help and just had very limited access to care. And one of the kiddos got sick one of these Fridays, and they didn't think they could travel with the kiddo, and said, would you be willing to try meeting with us online? Like, we're really making progress. We don't want to lose that momentum. And would you be willing to try it? I'm like, man, I don't know that it's going to work very well. I can't vouch for it. But I hear your earnestness, and I'm willing to give it a shot and give it a try, with all the caveats of it may be terrible and useless and a waste of time, but we'll give it a shot. And we did. We logged in, I think it was Skype at that time, and Skyped with them and did our session, and had made the same progress in the time that I would have anticipated if they had been in person. So it's like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The next time a session came back around for them, he said, it went kind of well last time for us on our end. It sure would be nice to save that 4 hours of driving and overnight with the kiddos. And would you be willing to try it again? Well, seemed to go pretty good. Sure, we'll give it a shot again. It just continued to work that way, in a way that made progress towards their goals, helped them accomplish the things that they were set out to accomplish. And the Lord began to shift and change my paradigm of thinking around that. We launched the practice with a heart towards solving some problems in the kingdom of having a scalable, high quality, faith-based mental health. Right? That there's a lot of things that make that challenging in the world, and a lot of organizations that need to refer hundreds of pastors or missionaries from around the world in a given year have difficulty finding enough resources for them to do it. So we started the practice with the mind of solving that problem. And so as the Lord took us on this journey, and in 2017, we started the practice in 2007, 10 years later, 2017, we felt this pieces coming together that was challenging us to move to an online platform, right? Which, like you said, in 2017, nobody wanted to do online counseling.
Right.
Weird. Just a few years before that, I'd have told you it was, not a good idea, but then God taking me through these experiences that began shifting. And we're thinking about all of these missionaries that we worked with who delayed getting help because it meant them having to leave the field and explain why they're leaving the field in order to try to get help. And so they had diminished effectiveness in the work that they were doing. And sometimes that delay led to reaching a crisis point for them and all for their family, and all because they didn't have access to care where they were at. And pastors in the same boat in rural settings that didn't have good access to care where they were at. So we felt like, I think the Lord is calling us to step into this space to really increase access to care for pastors and missionaries in places where they've got limited access to care. So even though all my friends were kind of like making fun of me, felt a little bit like Noah building the ark in the desert. They were like, who wants to do this, Josh? Like, this is crazy. And then 2020 came.
Right.
And overnight, COVID shut down all in-person counseling. Everybody had to move online because stay-at-home orders went in place. My phone started blowing up. Folks going, hey, Josh, about this online stuff. You've been doing it for a couple of years now. Like, we got to be online by Monday. Where do we
Here's your arrow back. You want your arrow back? Here it is.
Can I rescind that previous mocking? Buddy. And that's how it got going online.
So cool.
It's been wild.
That's so cool. Josh, as you unpack that story, it just amazes me how God directs our steps.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
in a way, I think sometimes, God gives us this vision to start something,
Mhm.
and let's admit it. I mean, we are in over our head most of the time when God calls us to do something, right?
Yeah.
And
I
he
don't think he
just
calls us to do things that don't require us getting in overhead, actually.
I think,
Yeah.
and I think that's really true. And it just amazes me to hear again that in a way you stumbled into this, right? But I don't believe you stumbled into it. I just think the Lord was moving the chess pieces around. For us, here's how it happened for us. In 2015, we had the heaviest travel schedule we had ever had. I mean, we were everywhere. And one of my boys said, "Dad, I'm worried about you.
Mm.
I think you're traveling too much. You need to think about providing service online." This was back in 2016.
Yeah.
And, he and I debated that back and forth, back and forth. But I said, okay, we'll give that a whirl. At that time, we were providing probably 90% of our services on site,
Mhm.
and 10% was remote. And by the time we got to about 2018, it had flipped, and it was about 80-20, 80 online and 20 on site. And so we had no idea the pandemic was coming.
Right.
And we were already in motion. And again, I mean, God can use your son, he can use circumstances, he can talk to you directly about something. And it's just encouraging to hear that he's in charge of the ship, right? Like he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yes.
And we just and I know we're not supposed to be talking about this today, but it just hit me fresh. Like, look, if you're listening today and you feel like you're in over your head, you're in good company, because God is going to lead you. He's going to direct you. Sometimes he'll use people to do that. Sometimes he'll speak to you directly. Sometimes he'll use circumstances. But be encouraged if you feel overwhelmed or in over your head. God's got you.
The only way that we can do it without our tendency to take credit for it, isn't it? And
You're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
100% right, Josh. So, Josh, it's been a while since we've sat down and talked, and I'm wondering what you're seeing as it relates to the current leadership landscape, specifically around the health of ministry leaders. What are you seeing? What are you observing? What are some of the trends, maybe?
yeah.
Enlighten
So
us on.
it's complex and messy out there.
Okay.
Is what I would say. You've got the societal generational shift that's also happening within the church and church leadership, and the paradigms of those different generations creating tension with each other. And that tension can be good as it leads to growth, but in the in-between time, when you're growing into some healthy changes, there's a lot of pain that's a part of that shift that happens also. And so I think it's important for us to be talking about and thinking about how we can navigate it well. So to flesh that out just a little bit more, what I mean by that is our boomer generation of pastors generally grew up in a paradigm of kind of grin and bear it, be faithful, show up, stuff down the pain that comes with ministry and engaging, and soldier on like a good soldier for Christ until you die, or Jesus returns, right? And that's just the way you do it. You suck it up and you lean in and you don't quit no matter what, right? And there's some benefit to that you see folks having consistency in ministry decade after decade after decade, and kind of celebrate those years of faithfulness in doing the work. And there's a downside to that you see, in our space in the counseling world, but it's felt throughout the body, the number of kids that are estranged from the church and from their pastor parent, and that don't have anything to do with God or the church because they felt like they were sacrificed on the altar of ministry. And you see marriages that maybe stay together, but there's no warmth or love in them. It's kind of, we are committed to not end our marriage and not divorce, but we're not really vibrantly in love and enjoying life together. We're kind of live separate lives under the same roof. It just has the consequences of not attuning to the signals that God wired into us that something's wrong and doing something about it, instead cutting off and stuffing down those things. So you have that kind of generational paradigm. And then you have a new generation of ministers, men and women feeling called to the field, who are operating from a different paradigm, kind of millennials, younger kind of piece, where mental health is less stigmatized and emotional intelligence is seen as a strength and something important for ministry, and avoiding the sins of our fathers in terms of sacrificing our families and marriages on the altar of ministry is kind of more topical. And it's like, no, we need to be mindful. I'm not going to have my family be like it was when I grew up, or what I've witnessed in so many other ministry families. And so there's this adamancy about not repeating those kind of sins in this generation. So there's a kind of pushback because the gatekeepers within the ministry and the work are from that older generation. And they're the ones that have been sludging it out for, 30, 40 years. In a lot of cases, but this isn't, this is stereotypical. So obviously there's exceptions. I'm not saying every person in leadership at a senior level is of this mindset, but there's enough of it that creates this grind between associate pastors and youth pastors and their senior pastor, and this kind of grind of kind of suck it up. This is how we do ministry. This is just ministry life. And you just got to come to terms with that. This is what it means to be in ministry. And generation of going, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So it's created this crises in the church as young ministers, drop out of ministry because they don't feel supported and they are unwilling to go down that pathway that some leadership is saying this is just what ministry is and what you have to do. And you have a boomer generation dying and retiring. And so we have pulpits being left empty and there being struggle and it creating some pain and difficulty within the body of not having shepherds. And it's a crisis right now.
Yeah.
Josh, I'm sure Jim probably has a follow-up question to that, but if you don't mind, Jim, I just want to go first. Josh, what can we do about that? I guess, and maybe Jim, you were going to ask that, what's our response? How can we help?
Yeah, I love that question. I think there's a twofold kind of approach that's needed. One is amongst peers, right? In the younger generation of ministers, there's a need for peer support. We need relationships with one another. We need to not be in it on our own, but instead have the relationships that can challenge us and support us and love on us and kick us in the seat of the pants and just kind of be in it with us in a way that provides the support that we need to pursue what we've been called to do and be faithful in what we've been called to do, even in the midst of less than ideal circumstances. Like there's a need to recognize in the younger generation that there are always less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah.
Jesus had less than ideal circumstances. Paul had less than ideal circumstances. Like, there's the work of the ministry is done in less than ideal circumstances.
Right.
And so whether that be unsupportive leadership or kind of the tensions, struggles that exist, or cultural things, or whatever the case. And we need those peer relationships to really support us and encourage us. So that's part of it. And that we really need the generation that has gone before us to have a interest in mentoring and discipling and coming alongside the younger generation, and recognizing that there's so much wisdom and blessing that needs to be imparted, and it has to be imparted with humility also, because there's things to learn from the younger generation. And if you don't have the humility and a willingness to engage a dialogue, you become irrelevant, right? That the younger generation is going to go, that didn't work so well for you and for so many families. I don't want that for myself. Yeah. And so, and yet they desperately need that mentorship and need the coming alongside of the older generation. They're hungry for it and long for it, and can't fully grow into what they've been called to well without it. And so there needs to be this dialogue and cooperation and mutual respect and humility in order to turn this thing.
Yeah, it's funny because we've mentioned here getting that next generation to take leadership has been, trying to find a children's pastor, an associate pastor, a youth pastor is becoming more and more difficult. Mm-hmm. And I help people plant churches for our network. And when I say, do you want to plant a church? What does your church look like? Close your eyes. Tell me, is it rural, urban, suburban? Are they young? Are they old? Are they wearing suits and ties? Are they wearing cutoff shorts? What is it you see? And the most common answer amongst those that are 30 years old-ish has been, I don't know, but I know it doesn't look like your church. Mm-hmm. I say, okay, what does that mean? Not offended by it, but what does that mean? Well, they begin to use words like authentic and emotionally responsible, stable. I'd rather do it I'd rather not have a stadium full of babies. I'd rather have a family room full of trusted, friends, and to do life together, almost communal, almost like let's raise chickens and have a vacant lot garden between our flats, kind of a vibe to it. Now, I think we know enough to know what we don't want. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we know enough yet to do what's in their heart yet. I've seen a couple of attempts at it, but they don't make it because it's not a realistic thing. So can you speak to both generations? And I think you have, let's be friends. We need wisdom. We need energy. Don't despise young people. Don't despise older people. Avoid being the two old guys in the balcony and the Muppets at all costs. Don't be a young smart aleck know-it-all at all costs, right? And let's become fathers and sons, daughters and mothers, not competitors of vision. Beyond that, is there anything else you've seen that might help us bridge that gap?
Well, I think it's a whole lot of that, right? And it's that the question, all of those things, right? Yeah. And so I think all of those things being the outcome that we're after. Yeah. I'm a person that likes to reverse engineer solutions, right? So how do we get there? If what you just described, Jim, is what it is, what are the actionable things that we do that actually result in that happening, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say things like creating space, time in your schedule to have coffee and break bread with the different generation, whether that's the younger generation pursuing the older generation and going, can we make space? I need to sit and listen and hear, and I want to understand where you're coming from these different pieces. And inside, I want to be known also and hear on the other side of that what God is doing in this generation and me has value and matters to you and in this generation. But that initiation and prioritizing and making space with humility and with genuine appreciation for the generation that has gone before, engaging. And on the other side of it, kind of, releasing kind of a patent mindset around church leadership that says, don't really give them much direction, just tell them the result that you want and kind of leave them to do it. But instead, investing the time and the energy, breaking bread, playing golf, developing relationship, whatever the context of that looks like, investing in the relationship for that to happen, which takes time and energy.
It's true that the younger generation doesn't want to be somebody's employee if they could be their son, right? Or partner versus employee. They want to be full share. I'll take responsibility if you'll give me some. But if you don't give me any and you just yell at me because I didn't stack the chairs high enough, we can see where there's you hired me. I'm nobody's slave. I'm nobody's employee. I want to be more than that. Okay. So another question. Are we going to switch here, John, or do you want another follow-up?
I just real quick, and then Josh, when we 7 or 8 years ago, the church I was attending planted a multi-site location, and our lead pastor asked me to serve as the campus pastor. I just started Converge coaching in a full-time capacity like 6 months prior. Wasn't really willing to do it, but I ended up doing it. I said, I'll give you a year. And we had 5 team leads at this campus. All of them were working in the marketplace. All of them were young. And so when we got done, I got done with that year and we handed it off to somebody else. I asked those team leads, I said, what was the most helpful thing to you in the last year? Every one of them said, the 90 minutes that we spent with you every month over coffee or lunch.
Yep.
That really shocked me. Like, really? But it just reinforces what you're saying, that there's something magical, not magical, that's the wrong word. There's something
divine,
beautiful that happens in those settings, where we would just ask questions like, you still having fun doing this?
What's causing you to not have fun? Where are the pieces that are creating pain? And how can I share of myself and my own story vulnerably about when I was in those same spaces, so you don't feel alone in that and feel like.
So if you're a pastor listening today and you have staff, Josh already said it, and I just want to reinforce it. Spend some quality face time on a regular basis with your staff, one-on-one. And I believe you'll get great results out of that if you'll approach it in a humble, curious way. And the fruit of those meetings was amazing.
Yes. I want to belabor this just so a minute longer to add some of the neuroscience in here. Because
I want to hear it. Bring it.
That our character change in maturation and growth is a right brain mediated process. It's not a left brain mediated process, which means all of the information in the world won't bring it about. Knowledge without being metabolized through relationship only puffs up. It doesn't change or transform us or mature us and grow us. It requires the relational interactions that metabolize that information into right brain relational experience that then transforms us. So giving your staff a book or reading a book together as a staff is wonderful information. It's very good, very helpful. In the absence of relational experiences that metabolize that information through right brain channels, it is not going to produce the maturation that you want to see in your staff. And it's in those 90-minute windows, it's in that time spent with and engaging and sharing of oneself and sharing of how the information that you're wanting to convey has showed up in your own life and is showing up in your own life, shared vulnerably, that moves it out of the left brain, processes, metabolizes it through that right brain channel, and is what brings about the maturation and transformation that you hoped for when you said, let's read this book together.
That's so good.
I love that. What's funny about that is we didn't make it more complicated by adding that step, did we? I think we made it, for me, it's more simple now. Spending time with people, caring about them, asking the right questions, listening with empathy, sharing wisdom. I over coffee, over food in a fishing boat. Who doesn't want to do this? It's
Right.
this. If you like people, you want to
Relational
do this.
discipleship.
Yeah.
Relational
Yeah.
discipleship. And I like a specific brand of what I call neuroscience informed relational discipleship. And then it takes the things that we have learned and continue to learn from studying Jesus's design of the nervous system and using that information about his design to inform the way we engage relational discipleship.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know we're going to want to do a second episode. I hope you'll stick around. If not, we'll just talk like we think you would talk, and you won't want that. So you need to stick around for the second one here. But the other thing is, I got one last question as we're running up against time, and that is Barnett just came up with the 2023 Pastor People Study, and he used an interesting phrase, and I want to run it past you to see what your experience says about this. He says that the people in our church, the people we serve, do not necessarily want stronger leaders. They want more resilient leaders. So agree, disagree, and what is the difference between a strong leader and a resilient leader? If I'm sitting in the pew and I say that guy's a strong leader, but that guy's a resilient leader, what's the difference when I say that?
Yeah, so I would agree with it wholeheartedly. And I think the language can be a little confusing because resilient leaders are strong leaders. But the point that's being made, if we define what is that perception of the strong leader, what we're really describing is that older guard that we were talking about, that idea that I have the strength, that I'm unaffected, I press down emotion, I'm not impacted, I head forward, plow through whatever the problem is, and I'm decisive and am able to kind of endure the storms of whatever. Strong, right? But what we see then with those guys is either what we described earlier of the kind of hollowing out inside, going through the motions of ministry, the wake of relational destruction that happens because of that, or they just burn out, right? They implode and we have these big kind of mega church disasters that are very public implosions from that kind of approach to leadership. Whereas the resilient pastor is more emotionally attuned with their own experience, has the emotional intelligence to use that information to know when a break is needed and knowing when reaching out for help is the right thing to do, and lives in vulnerable community with other pastors and other safe people, and has coaches and counselors in their corner helping them unpack things. They're able to have a stability and longevity that navigates all of the storms without all of the destruction that the strong leader does as they're navigating it. So I really think that's the dynamic that Barna is picking up on through the polling within the body.
And it seems to me that the resilient leader is more relatable.
Yeah.
To
Absolutely.
the average person in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the normal Christian's life.
Yeah. It's the perfect kind of image of the strong leader up front that's got it all together. There's more relatableness to it, and there's a modeling of a healthy moving through life in life's challenges in an authentic and vulnerable way.
You always leave me speechless. Yeah, it's funny because, again, I was discipled by guys who fought the Nazis, right? And the way you win a war is you don't dwell on your dead buddy. You dwell on the Nazi that's still shooting, and you move forward. And then you don't make new friends because the new guys always die first, and you don't think you're going to make it, and then you do, and you're not quite sure what to do with it afterwards. Those are the guys that were my heroes, if you will, growing up. And then I grew up in the faith. And then, there's that divide, right? Where you snowflakes can't take one. Yeah, I can't knock on doors. What if they say no? It's like, we used to win souls knocking on doors. Well, now we just irritate people, but we want them to suffer the way we suffered, that kind of thing. It's fascinating to hear. People just need to be heard. They need to be valued. They need to be known. They need to be entrusted. They need to be released. They need everything we needed. But we did get it differently from different people, but that doesn't make what they need wrong. Is that right? Like we shouldn't be demanding that they become older people. We should be meeting them where they are and with knowledge doing the same steps, just in the way they need us to do that. Is that?
And we should want that evolution to take place, that we should believe that God is at work in each generation to bring healing and bring advancement and to move his kingdom forward. And that God is not looking to kind of be stagnant. He stays the same, but he evolves us through a process of maturation as his people throughout the course of our lifetime and throughout the course of human history, right? Like who we are as a body of Christ followers and of those honoring God looks a lot different than it did 6,000 years ago, right?
Right. Sure.
It's supposed to generation grow in wisdom and stand on the shoulders of the generation before. And we should want that for our kids, and we should want that for our young leaders that we're cultivating, not that they would be punched out duplicates of us, but that they would stand on our shoulders and that they would benefit from all that we've learned and grow beyond it in ways we can benefit from as well.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, would you join us for another one? Because we've got some more questions we want to ask.
Oh, man. I'm having so much fun with you guys. I can't.
We feel the same way. Listen, if someone wants to reach out to your organization, how would they do that, Josh?
Yeah. So 2 ways. One, visit mycounselor.online. So it's just mycounselor.online is the web address. And you can learn about the counseling services that we provide, how we can partner with your church to support sermon series or, you provide care to your staff, lots of different ways that we can be supportive of the work that you're doing. And if you're curious about some of the topics we've been noodling around neuroscience-informed relational discipleship and some of these different ideas, you can go out to where I put my articles at joshspurlock.com, and you can find all sorts of brain tickling around these topics.
Yeah. And if you're watching or listening today and you reach out to My Counselor online, if you mention Converge Coaching, you'll get a $25 discount. I believe that's on their first session. Is that right, Josh?
You got it. So that helps us kind of know that you guys are being touched and being heard through this channel. And that's a gift to all those that would connect. All you got to do is, like you said, mention John or Converge Coaching, and we'll get you taken care of.
Awesome. Like you mentioned, Jim at Converge Coaching, is it an extra $25? I'm just curious how that functions.
Actually, it does. We actually tacked on an additional $25
you it's going to take longer anyway. So good. Right on. Well, thanks, guys. And same with us, right? John, convergecoach.com, and anything we can do to help. I hope you hear the heart of this ministry. It's, there's a $25 thing now. That's cool. But remember, this is his 4th visit with us. And everything he's done for us, he's done for free. Like we're not in this for the money and the fame. Nobody is. What we're in this for is to help you succeed at what God's call is on your life. And we really care about that. So how can Converge Coach? How can My Counselor? How can we help you? Just let us know. That's what we're here for. So God bless you, our watchers and listeners. We look forward to continue this conversation next week as you continue to lead from alignment.